Before the Russia-Ukraine war, everything was good for Europe, and it has good relation with Vladimir Putin. European countries used to buy crude oil and natural gas from the Russian Federation, and used to maintain a decent relation with China, but things suddenly changed when Russia invaded Ukraine, and from there the decline of Europe started. Economic hardship inflation started, and let's conclude in the further video that how Europe dig its own grave. The Europe economy was flourishing in the 20th century. Some countries like Germany was considered the power grid of Europe. France is stronger military-wise, but after the start of Russia-Ukraine war, the US urged Europe to boycott Russian natural gas and to stand with Ukraine. Even the European countries like Germany, France, UK all sanctioned the Russian goods, but it ended up costing their people and economy. Europe used to get cheap natural gas and crude oil from Russia, but after the sanction, they used to buy this from other countries by paying much higher price, which lead to spending more money on buying crude oil. For example, UK, whose economy was already not performing well, took a massive dent by spending more on crude oil, and this lead to increasing taxation which directly affect the citizen and the middle-class household. And this was not only happening in UK, it was spreading slowly to every European country like a virus. And this virus of energy crisis, which leaves a dent on the Europe economy, and if any country which have suffered the most from this energy crisis, it's definitely Germany.
In Ukraine, Russia launching a broad new attack using missiles and drones.
Why is Germany's economy crumbling?
Unlike the cities of one-party Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, Berlin is divided into communist and anti-communist zones. Here, the tensions of the Cold War become real.
Germany, which was once considered the power grid of Europe, the strongest economy is falling apart. The industrial sector, heavily reliant on affordable energy, faced production challenges. High energy costs rendered German products less competitive globally. Even the automobile sector was hit by this, and big German automobile company like Volkswagen shuts their plant, leading to reduced exports and economic contraction. The chemical industry in particular struggled with increased operational costs, resulting in plant closures and job losses. Policy decisions, such as the phase-out of nuclear energy, further strained the energy supply, increasing dependence on fossil fuels. Despite efforts to transition to renewable energy, bureaucratic hurdles impeded rapid adoption, leaving a gap in the energy mix. Germany, being heavily dependent on Russia for their energy, but still Germany policymakers choose to be all out against the Russians, which eventually affect the citizen, the middle-class household of Germany. And this leads to recession, economic crises, and increased taxation. And this policy of boycotting cheap natural gas and crude oil will haunt the German people for years. You can tell that German leaders and their economists, they don't the aftermath of this bad foreign policy. And bad foreign policy doesn't only mean to enter into every issue taking such action that would hurt the economy. It also means being heavily dependent on others. Europe is heavily dependent on USA for their security. Without the USA, Europe will be in danger. Look at the defense budget between NATO and USA. NATO spend total of $1.3 trillion on defense, but in this $1.3 trillion budget, the United States of America spend more than all European countries combine, a total of $860 billion. And now, the new Trump administration is considering to either reduce their defense budget or to withdraw from NATO.
No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
And this is horrific for European countries. Their security will be under threat. They can't defend themselves. They depend on the USA for their security.
Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
And Trump may demand money from European countries in exchange for safety. And Trump have mentioned multiple times that Europe doesn't spend much as the USA do.
Last 8 years, the United States spent more on defense than all other NATO countries combined.
And the European countries should increase their defense budget.
But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense.
And if the U.S. reduces its participation in NATO, European countries would have to suddenly increase their defense budget, which would lead to high taxation for the Europeans. And Europe had their chance to be self-reliant and arm themselves instead of being dependent on others for safety. But the leaders choose not to spend on military for years, which is costing them now. And for some period of time, there will be a huge gap in security of Europe. And this is not over yet. European countries dependent on USA for their trade. Also, Europe, most of the trade is done with USA. And the USA market is very important for them, and if tariff is imposed on the European Union, it would be disastrous for the exporter of European countries. And if the Trump tariff gamble fails, not only Europe or USA, the whole world would be headed towards recession and stagflation, which means low growth and high inflation, and this can happen all over the world.
David, the retaliations are rolling in now. We had that 84% retaliation from the Chinese overnight, and now we're getting a retaliation from the European Union. Just in the past couple of moments, the European Union approving tariffs on about $23 billion worth of American goods in.
And as Europe don't have good relation with Russia, so they don't have much diversity and variety in their trade, but they used to have diversity before the war, and Europe policy was that they would weaken Vladimir Putin, isolate him so there won't be any security threat in the future. And this was working under the Joe Biden administration. But this plan failed as Trump come in power, and he doesn't want war. And he's also considering removal of sanction from Russia and the USA. Companies are in the talk to return in the Moscow. And Putin has also gave the offer to Trump increase to work together to mine rare earth minerals in Russia. And I can guarantee you one thing, that Russian economy will be flourishing in the next 4 years with Putin and Trump partnership. So this idea was pretty much bad for the Europeans. And what policies should have European leaders adapt for a better future and prosperity for their citizens? What a good foreign policy, actually. Let's understand this with the example of Germany and India.
That Europe's problems are the world's problems. But the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
Don't listen to the Americans.
Energy ministers will meet at one.
They want India to keep buying Russian oil.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China. What I worry about is the threat from within.
When Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States and some Eastern European Union countries, such as Poland and the Baltic states, have been pressuring the bloc to boycott Russian energy exports, but others have refused to join the effort, including Hungary, which is hugely dependent on Russian oil, and Bulgaria. Germany, the continent's largest economy, has been the most prominent opponent of a boycott. It relies on Russia for about 55% of its natural gas, 35% of its oil, and half its coal. Look at this article of CBC from 2022. Germany's employers and unions joined together in opposing an immediate European Union ban on natural gas imports from Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. Robert Habeck, Germany's vice chancellor and economics minister, in lengthy post, Mr. Habeck said that even as Germany found alternative sources of energy, it would remain dependent on Russian gas and oil for many months, if not years. And in 2022, March 23rd, speaking on the floor of the Bundestag, the German legislature, a boycott of Russian oil and gas would have severe economic and social consequences in Germany and the rest of Europe. Chancellor Olaf Scholz told lawmakers to end its reliance on Russian natural gas as quickly as possible, but said to do so from one day to the next would mean plunging our country and all of Europe into recession. Hundreds of thousands of jobs would be at risk, he added. But still, Germany chose to listen to others and not to take a stand for themselves.
Crossing the border of Ukraine again, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
But what if I told that even after boycotting Russian crude oil, they import Russian oil from other countries by paying much higher prices? Even though Germany says it won't be buying Russian oil at all in 2023, Germany start importing Russia crude oil through India. Now here's the catch. When Europe stand against Russia and sanction their oil and goods, India sees an opportunity in this crisis and they start importing cheap crude oil from Russia and sell it to Europe at a higher price. And fuels from Russian oil gets backdoor entry into Europe via India. Despite Ukraine war, and some of you may think this is bad, India shouldn't have import crude oil from Russia. Well, I would call it great foreign policy and good economic decision. Well, doing what's in your interest and doing something you benefit from is the best thing a country can do. And this reminds us on the greatest quote of geopolitics said by Patience Johnson, that in politics there's no permanent friend, no permanent enemy, only permanent interest. And this absolutely true. You have to look for your own interest. India look for its interest because if they haven't done that, they would have been in recession in this where the actual difference was between India and Germany. Germany being dependent on Russia still choose be against the Russians and didn't think for the sake of their people and the sake of their business. They bought same oil from different countries by paying much higher price, and they totally ignored the fact that German will suffer because of this. Whereas India told the world that they cannot afford to boycott Russian oil, they have a large population to maintain, and inflation would increase in their country. And even if they would have sanction or even buy oil from other countries by paying higher price, this would lead to hurting their economy.
I think I'm 1/5 of the world's population. I am today the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. But I think I'm entitled to have my own side. I'm entitled to weigh my own interests, make my own choices. And my choices will not be cynical and transactional, but they will be a balance of my values and my interests. There is no country in the world which disregards its interests.
So now tell me, if a country like India can take stance for itself, why can't Germany do that? Why don't Germany policymakers think about their people and work on their own interest? And you can tell that German leaders and their economists, they don't the aftermath of this bad foreign policy. And bad foreign policy doesn't only mean to enter into every issue taking such action that would hurt the economy. You might think that why it would hurt the economy if we just spend much more on just one thing. Well, it's not that easy as it looks. The budget for everything is fixed. Where to spend more, where to spend less. If the government spend more chunk of money in single thing, the balance gets disturbed, and this lead to having less money to spend on the other thing, like healthcare, education, infrastructure, and creation of job in these, are foundation to have a good economy. If any one of these are compromised, then it lead to inflation and sudden increase in the price of petrol, diesel, and food prices, which will eventually lead to slow GDP growth and won't be able to attract foreign investment,